I quit my dream job because I believed love meant building a future together. 6 months later, I stood outside a rooftop restaurant in downtown Chicago, watching my girlfriend raise a champagne glass with the one man she had laughed off 100 times. "He's just a friend. You're overthinking it." Those words echoed in my head as I watched him wrap an arm around her waist, while their coworkers applauded. She leaned into him so naturally that it looked like they had been practicing this moment for months. I never walked inside. Instead, I turned around, canceled the transfer of the last $180,000 I had promised to invest in her new business, called my attorney, and ended the partnership agreement that legally tied our finances together. 23 minutes later, my phone showed 97 missed calls. Then she started knocking on my apartment door. I didn't answer. "My name is Claire Morgan. I'm 33 years old. And until that Valentine's weekend, I honestly believed I was the luckiest woman in Illinois. Emily and I had been together for 7 years. We met at Northwestern University, survived long distance while she finished graduate school in Boston, and eventually settled in Chicago with one shared goal: build the kind of life we'd once dreamed about in tiny coffee shops where neither of us could afford the drinks we ordered. Back then, I was a senior aerospace engineer at one of the biggest private aviation companies in the country. I loved my job. Every project challenged me. Every promotion felt earned. And for the first time in my life, I could honestly say I had found work that made me excited to wake up every morning. Emily had a different dream. She wanted to launch her own healthcare technology startup. She was brilliant, ambitious, and fearless. But building a company required more than talent. It required money, stability, and someone willing to carry the weight, while she chased the impossible. That someone became me. I turned down the biggest promotion of my career because it required relocating to Seattle for 3 years. Emily insisted she would never ask me to sacrifice my future for hers. But I did it anyway. I resigned from the job I had spent almost a decade earning because I believed we were investing in our future, not hers alone. Looking back now, I realized the biggest mistake wasn't leaving my dream job. It was believing that the person who kept saying, "He's just a friend," was protecting my heart instead of preparing to break it. The first few months after I left my job felt strangely peaceful. Emily threw herself into building her startup, and I convinced myself that every sacrifice was worth it. I handled almost everything else. I paid our mortgage in Lincoln Park, cooked dinner most nights, answered investor emails when she was overwhelmed, and even reviewed her pitch decks because I had years of experience presenting complex technical projects to executives. Whenever people praised Emily's success, I smiled. I never corrected anyone. They called her a self-made founder, and I quietly accepted becoming invisible. Looking back, that was the first warning sign. The second warning sign had a name. Ryan Brooks. Emily introduced him as her new marketing consultant. About 8 months after the company launched, "Relax," she laughed when I noticed how often his name appeared on her phone. "Ryan is married, and besides, he's just a friend." I wanted to believe her. Trust isn't something you switch off after 7 years. So I ignored the late-night strategy meetings. I ignored the weekend business trips that somehow always included Ryan. I ignored the expensive whiskey she suddenly started buying even though she hated whiskey herself. "Ryan likes that brand," she once admitted before quickly changing the subject. Even then, I stayed quiet. Every relationship has seasons, I told myself. Things would get better after the company stabilized. Then came the breakthrough. A national healthcare network signed a multi-million-dollar contract with Emily's startup. The news spread across Chicago's business community overnight. Her face appeared in magazines. She was invited onto podcasts. Local television stations called her one of the fastest-rising entrepreneurs in America. I couldn't have been prouder. That Friday morning, I secretly ordered a custom diamond necklace with a small compass pendant. Years earlier, Emily had told me that a compass symbol reminded her that no matter how lost life became, she'd always find her way home. I wanted to surprise her during the company's celebration dinner. I even wrote her a handwritten letter thanking her for never giving up on her dream. The irony still makes me sick. That evening, I arrived at the signature room overlooking downtown, Chicago, carrying a gift bag in one hand and the letter in the other. The private ballroom buzzed with laughter, live music, and flashing cameras. Nearly 200 guests filled the room. Investors, employees, reporters, and business partners. No one recognized me. Some assumed I was catering staff because I wasn't wearing an expensive designer dress like everyone else. Others simply walked past me. I smiled anyway. Emily had worked hard for this moment. She deserved every second of it. Then I heard someone behind me say, "They're such a beautiful couple." I naturally looked toward the stage. Ryan stood beside Emily with a champagne glass raised high. The master of ceremonies laughed into the microphone. "I think everyone here already knows these two are practically inseparable." The audience laughed. Emily laughed too. Not the polite laugh she used at networking events. The real one. The one that used to belong only to me. Ryan wrapped his arm around her waist as cameras flashed across the ballroom. She didn't step away. She leaned closer. Close enough that the photographers asked them to hold the pose. And they did. Someone behind me whispered, "I heard they've been together for months." Another voice answered, "I thought everyone knew." My heart stopped. Not because strangers believed the rumor, but because no one in that room seemed surprised. Then Ryan lifted his champagne glass, looked directly into Emily's eyes and said, "Here's to the future we've been building together." The room erupted into applause. Emily smiled and reached for his hand. The gift bag slipped from my fingers. The compass necklace hit the marble floor with a sound I'll never forget. Neither of them even turned around. I stood frozen for what felt like an eternity, staring at the shattered gift box lying on the marble floor. Around me, the applause continued. Glasses clinked and cameras flashed as if the most important woman in my life hadn't just erased me from hers. No one noticed the tears filling my eyes. Or maybe they did. They simply didn't care. I bent down, picked up the broken compass necklace, slipped it back into the box, and quietly walked out of the ballroom before anyone could stop me. The cold Chicago air hit my face like a slap. I sat inside my car, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. My phone vibrated. Emily calling. I ignored it. A second later, Emily calling again. Then a text appeared. "Where are you?" "I thought you were coming tonight." I laughed. Not because anything was funny, because I finally understood just how perfectly she had separated her two lives. I opened my banking app. For years, every major investment I'd made in Emily's company had gone through Carter Innovation Holdings, the family investment firm my late grandmother had left to me. Emily had always believed those investments were automatic, something that would continue as long as we were together. They weren't. I was the only person authorized to approve future funding. I called my attorney, Rebecca Lawson. She answered on the second ring. "Claire, is everything okay?" "No." I took a slow breath. "I want every remaining investment suspended immediately." She went silent. "Claire, that's nearly $20 million in scheduled funding over the next 18 months. I know. There will be consequences. There already are." She didn't ask another question. "I'll start the paperwork tonight." When the call ended, I contacted our financial advisor and canceled every personal guarantee attached to Emily's upcoming expansion loan. Without those guarantees, the bank would immediately review the company's credit approval. I wasn't trying to destroy her dream. I was simply refusing to finance a future that no longer included me. Less than 15 minutes later, Emily called again. Then again. Then Ryan called. That surprised me. I declined both. By the time I reached my apartment, I had over 100 missed calls. A black SUV suddenly pulled into the parking lot behind me. Emily jumped out before the vehicle had fully stopped. Her mascara had run down her cheeks, and the confidence she'd worn on stage had completely disappeared. "Claire!" She hurried toward me. "Please, let me explain." I locked my car and calmly faced her. "Explain what?" "What you saw isn't—" "Don't." She froze. "I've heard that sentence too many times already." She wiped her face. Ryan and I had to look close for the investors. Everyone expected us to appear united. I stared at her. "So holding his hand was for investors?" Her lips trembled. "It became complicated." "No," I replied quietly. "Software is complicated. Contracts are complicated. Lying is actually very simple." She lowered her eyes. "I never wanted to hurt you." "But you planned to." She looked back up. "What does that mean?" I pulled out my phone and turned the screen toward her. An email from Rebecca Lawson had just arrived. Investment suspension confirmed. Every future capital commitment had been canceled. Every financial guarantee had been withdrawn. Every ownership protection clause had been activated. Emily's face lost every trace of color. What did you do?" "I protected what belongs to me." She grabbed my wrist. "Claire, if investors hear about this, they'll panic." "They already have." "No, they'll pull out." I gently removed her hand. "They're making their own decisions." She shook her head desperately. You can't do this because you're angry. I looked into her eyes for several seconds before answering. I'm not doing this because I'm angry. I'm doing it because I finally stopped confusing love with permission. For the first time since we met 7 years earlier, Emily had absolutely nothing to say. Her phone suddenly began ringing. She looked down at the screen. The caller ID read, Board Chairman. She answered immediately. After only a few seconds, every drop of confidence disappeared from her face. What do you mean the emergency meeting is tonight? She listened silently, then whispered, No, Claire wouldn't. Her eyes slowly lifted toward me. I didn't need to hear the rest of the conversation. The board had finally learned the truth. The woman they believed was simply the founder's supportive girlfriend. Was the majority investor who had quietly built the company long before Emily ever stood under the spotlight. And for the first time, Emily realized she hadn't just betrayed the woman who loved her. She had betrayed the one person holding her entire empire together. Emily ended the call without saying another word. For several seconds, we simply stood there in the cold February air, neither of us speaking. The city around us kept moving. Cars rolled through the intersection. A train rumbled overhead. Somewhere nearby, people laughed as they walked into restaurants to celebrate Valentine's weekend. It felt strange that the world could remain so normal while mine had just ended. Claire, Emily whispered, please, don't let 7 years disappear because of one terrible mistake. I looked at her carefully. A mistake? She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I got caught up in everything. The company, the attention, the investors. Ryan and I started pretending we were together because people thought it made us look stronger. Then it just kept going. I didn't interrupt. I never stopped loving you. Those words should have broken me. Instead, they made me feel nothing. For years, every major investment I'd made in Emily's company had gone through Carter Innovation Holdings, the family investment firm my late grandmother had left to me. Emily had always believed those investments were automatic, something that would continue as long as we were together. They weren't. I was the only person authorized to approve future funding. I called my attorney, Rebecca Lawson. She answered on the second ring. Claire, is everything okay? No. I took a slow breath. I want every remaining investment suspended immediately. She went silent. Claire, that's nearly $20 million in scheduled funding over the next 18 months. I know. There will be consequences. There already are. She didn't ask another question. I'll start the paperwork tonight. When the call ended, I contacted our financial advisor and canceled every personal guarantee attached to Emily's upcoming expansion loan. Without those guarantees, the bank would immediately review the company's credit approval. I wasn't trying to destroy her dream. I was simply refusing to finance a future that no longer included me. Less than 15 minutes later, Emily called again. Then again. Then Ryan called. That surprised me. I declined both. By the time I reached my apartment, I had over 100 missed calls. A black SUV suddenly pulled into the parking lot behind me. Emily jumped out before the vehicle had fully stopped. Her mascara had run down her cheeks, and the confidence she'd worn on stage had completely disappeared. Claire! She hurried toward me. Please, let me explain. I locked my car and calmly faced her. Explain what? What you saw isn't... Don't. She froze. I've heard that sentence too many times already. She wiped her face. Ryan and I had to look close for the investors. Everyone expected us to appear united. I stared at her. So holding his hand was for investors? Her lips trembled. It became complicated. No, I replied quietly. Software is complicated. Contracts are complicated. Lying is actually very simple. She lowered her eyes. I never wanted to hurt you, but you planned to. She looked back up. What does that mean? I pulled out my phone and turned the screen toward her. An email from Rebecca Lawson had just arrived. Investment suspension confirmed. Every future capital commitment had been canceled. Every financial guarantee had been withdrawn. Every ownership protection clause had been activated. Halfway through our conversation, she smiled and said something that stayed with me. You know, she said, it's amazing how different you look. Different how? You don't look like someone waiting for another person to choose you anymore. I smiled for the first time in a very long while. She was right. Losing Emily had felt like losing my future. In reality, I had only lost the version of my future that depended on someone who had already stopped choosing me. The best decision I ever made wasn't suspending the investments. It wasn't walking away from the relationship. It was finally realizing that real love never asks you to disappear so someone else can shine. And if someone can only reach the top by pretending you were never part of their journey, then they never deserve to walk beside you in the first place.